Empire gave Earth one chance to surrender, and we said no? In just one day, humanity went from overlooked to unstoppable, fighting back not with brute force, but with brilliance. This isn't just a battle story. It's the moment the universe realized humans don't break. We adapt. And when the stars came for us, we didn't run. We bluffed, and they ran. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the more video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The clouds over the Atlantic shimmered oddly that morning, like heat waves twisting across cold air. No one noticed at first. People went on with their lives, commuters rushed to work, children clutched backpacks, and fishermen pulled their nets. But 200 miles above Earth, something ancient and immense stirred. Satellites blinked offline, communication channels crackled with static, and a shadow passed across the moon like a curtain being drawn. The world had no warning, no signs to prepare, only silence and then a voice. It came through every screen, every device, every speaker. TVs changed channels on their own. Phones buzzed even without power. Radios that hadn't worked in decades came to life, crackling with a signal too loud to ignore. A deep, mechanical voice spoke in perfect English, but there was no mistaking that it wasn't human. People of Earth, it began, cold and deliberate. You are now part of the Drexari Dominion. Surrender peacefully, and you will be spared. Resist, and you will cease to exist. You have one planetary cycle to comply. The transmission ended just as quickly as it had begun. Panic followed. Stock markets froze. Emergency broadcasts took over the air. In the halls of global power, leaders shouted into secure phones trying to make sense of it. But in a quiet, cluttered home in Edinburgh, an old man named Harlan Miles simply took a slow sip of tea and stared at the blank TV screen. Once a decorated Air Force commander, Harlan had long since retired to a life of books, radio tinkering, and gardening. But he knew military language, and that transmission had the sharp rhythm of a war declaration. Halfway across the globe in Nairobi, Dr. Nessa Quaid stood in front of her university class, stunned into silence. She was a cognitive scientist, someone who had spent her life decoding human behavior and thought patterns. But this wasn't human. Her students were staring at her, hoping for answers. She didn't have any. Not yet. But something, in the voice, in the cold choice of words, sparked a deep, unsettling thought in her mind. They believe we're weak. At the United Nations in Geneva, chaos reigned. The Security Council argued over whether it was a prank, a glitch, or a hostile act. Then came the footage, images from telescopes and satellites showing massive Drexari ships drifting silently into Earth's orbit, casting black shapes across the skies. They weren't sleek or metallic. They looked almost organic, like massive sea creatures frozen in time. Each vessel pulsed with violet lights and strange markings, completely different from any human engineering. No nation was spared. The sky bore unfamiliar shapes across every continent. The Drexari weren't hiding, they wanted to be seen. And more than that, they wanted to be feared. The next 12 hours changed everything. Countries activated nuclear protocols. Fighter jets scrambled. Scientists were pulled from labs and airports, rerouted to emergency meetings underground. People rioted, others prayed. But one message repeated in private circles among those who held real power. Don't show fear. Not yet. That evening, in a reinforced bunker beneath London, Harlan was brought in by military escort. The Prime Minister, a man Harlan had never met, greeted him personally. "We need your mind," the PM said simply. "The world is bracing for a war we do not understand." In that same hour, Nessa Quaid received a call from the newly formed Global Science Response Unit. Her expertise in communication patterns and psychological warfare was now critical. She was flown to a facility in Iceland where scientists and engineers from 20 nations gathered. Their mission: study the alien transmission, learn everything possible from the voice, tone, and structure. There had to be clues, patterns, vulnerabilities, something they could use. And Nessa found something chilling. The alien voice used a syntax that suggested not just control, but familiarity with conquest. "They've done this before," she whispered to a colleague, many times. Meanwhile, across Earth's skies, the Drexari ships remained still, not firing, not moving, watching, waiting. A silent pressure hung in the air like a thunderstorm holding its breath. But on a satellite dish in Peru, a team of amateur astronomers accidentally intercepted a secondary Drexari frequency. At first, they thought it was static, but when played backward and slowed, a pattern emerged. NASA's team verified it hours later. It was a Drexari signal designed for internal communication, one that hadn't been encrypted. The aliens were discussing Earth in real time. They thought humans were disorganized, technologically backward, and emotionally fragile. That was their mistake. By the time sunrise reached Tokyo, Earth's real response had begun, quiet, determined, and dangerous. Not in panic, not in surrender, but in planning. The world was afraid, yes, but that fear was turning into focus. Across bunkers and labs, aircraft carriers and hidden bases, a phrase began to pass from one mouth to another. Let them underestimate us. Because soon, Earth would whisper back. The world had barely begun to recover from the shock of the Drexari message when the first wave of resistance quietly took shape. The skies were still filled with massive alien warships, but down on Earth, the real battle was beginning, not with weapons but with ideas. Across every continent, scientists, engineers, and strategists gathered in underground bunkers and secured research centers. They were not soldiers. They didn't wear uniforms or carry rifles, but they were now humanity's most important warriors. In a secure Arctic research base, Captain Lena Cross stood beside her new assignment, a sleek experimental spacecraft named Vigil. It was unlike anything she'd ever piloted, built in secret. By a multinational coalition, Vigil was coated in a material designed to bend light, sound, and radar, making it nearly invisible. It wasn't built for brute strength. It was built to move in silence, to appear where no one expected, and disappear before anyone could respond. Lena had always been a bit of a rebel in flight school, more comfortable trusting her gut than following procedure. Now that unorthodox thinking made her the perfect pilot for an unconventional mission. At the same time, Dr. Omar Vale, a soft-spoken astrobiologist from São Paulo, studied alien biology through the Drexari transmission footage. Every movement of the Drexari leaders, every flick of their insect-like limbs was carefully logged and analyzed. While others focused on their ships and weapons, Omar asked different questions. What made them tick? How did they see the world? How did they communicate, not with machines but with each other? His questions led to a breakthrough. They don't rely just on speech, he told the International Science Council during a late-night briefing. They use electromagnetic pulses, sound frequencies, and chemical signals. It's like talking, with light, music, and scent all at once. That discovery lit a fire across the scientific teams. If the Drexari had sensitive systems for communication, then those same systems might also be weaknesses. The idea was simple but bold. What if humans could build a signal that disrupted Drexari communication the same way a loud siren might? Stun someone in a quiet room? Lena's first test mission in Vigil was to fly undetected into low orbit, close enough to one of the smaller Drexari ships to collect data. As she climbed into the cockpit, the air around her buzzed with tension. Everyone knew this was risky. If she was detected, there would be no rescue. The Drexari didn't take prisoners. As Vigil silently rose from its launch pad and entered the sky, the world held its breath. Inside, Lena's hands moved quickly but calmly. She knew this craft inside and out. Sensors lit up on her display as she slipped past the outer edge of the Drexari perimeter. The enemy ship loomed ahead, like a metal insect, motionless but terrifying. She activated her scanners and began collecting data. The ship's patterns, its power cycles, its defense pulses. Everything was being recorded. Back on Earth, Omar and his team waited anxiously. The data Lena returned confirmed their theory. The Drexari's sensory organs were hyper-attuned to very specific frequencies. If humans could generate the right kind of signal, loud in their spectrum but silent in ours, it could cause disorientation or even pain. The idea was radical. No one had ever fought a war with invisible sound. But now they had a chance. Within 48 hours, teams around the world were building prototypes. Cell towers were retrofitted to broadcast strange, silent signals. Old radio dishes were brought back online and modified with new transmitters. Engineers in Berlin developed tiny devices that could pulse a cocktail of signals directly into a Drexari ship's environment. It was part science, part gamble. The first field test took place in a desert base in Nevada. A captured Drexari probe was activated and monitored. Then, the signal was triggered. At first, nothing happened. Then, the probe began shaking. Its lights flickered. It emitted a high-pitched screech and shut down entirely. "It's working," Omar whispered. The plan was now real. Operation Mirage, a global effort to build a network of invisible weapons. Ones that didn't explode or burn, but instead confused, blinded, and disoriented the enemy through their own biology. But the Drexari weren't sitting still. Marshal Karelak, orbiting Earth in his command vessel, had grown impatient. He ordered a planetary scan for military installations and began preparing for a traditional bombardment. That was his mistake. The humans weren't gathering tanks or fighters. They were preparing for something the Drexari couldn't understand: psychological warfare. Back in orbit, Lena Cross received her new orders. She would lead a small fleet of stealth ships to deploy the first wave of Mirage devices across key points in the atmosphere. They moved like ghosts, never seen, never heard, only leaving behind strange equipment attached to towers, buildings, and satellite arrays. The Drexari watched Earth in confusion. No military movements, no surrender, just silence and odd spikes in electromagnetic energy. "They're doing something," Thurex, the alien strategist, warned Karelak. "But I can't understand what." "You don't need to understand it," Karelak replied. "We'll crush them anyway." But as Earth's strange silence deepened, and its people grew more focused and less afraid, it became clear the real fight had begun. Not with firepower, but with intelligence. Not by outgunning the Drexari, but by outsmarting them. And behind every quiet preparation was a single shared belief: they think we're weak. Let's prove them wrong. The stars over Earth had never looked so bright, or so dangerous. From orbit, the alien fleet remained still, its massive Drexari warships hovering like ancient gods waiting for judgment. But far beneath them, humanity was no longer idle. What had begun as panic and disbelief had transformed into something else entirely: resolve. In every corner of the world, people worked without sleep, building something no species had ever tried before. A coordinated resistance not based on brute strength, but on speed, creativity, and understanding the enemy's blind spots. Commander Harlan Miles stood in the central war room of the United Earth Defense Council, surrounded by blinking monitors and tired faces. He had been a soldier once, but never for a battle like this. He wasn't commanding an army of tanks or fighter jets. Instead, he was leading a network of scientists, engineers, and digital warriors who were turning bits of data and captured Drexari tech into real weapons. There were no rules for this kind of war. And that was the advantage. The Drexari played by tradition. Humans didn't. Not far from there, in a lab buried beneath Iceland's icy mountains, Dr. Omar Vale worked alongside a young engineer named Kira Sandoval. She was brilliant, bold, and full of ideas that made older generals nervous. She had created something they now called shadow pulse emitters, small portable devices that could mimic Earth's background noise but hide electronic signals and confuse alien targeting systems. Omar tested them in controlled simulations, and the results were shocking. Drexari drones flew in circles, unable to lock onto targets. Their sensors misfired, thinking shadows were threats and real objects were invisible. "We're not just jamming them," Kira explained to a group of military advisors. "We're turning their own technology against them." Her idea soon became a core part of Earth's counter-strategy. If the Drexari couldn't see their enemies, they couldn't fight them. The first real test came a week later when the Igaider stealth ship Vigil, piloted by Captain Lena Cross, launched its next mission: a direct strike on a Drexari communication hub near the moon. The ship carried a full team: including combat engineers and specialists trained to deploy Kira's devices in hostile environments. The risk was enormous, but the reward could change the entire battle. As Vigil approached the enemy outpost, the tension in the control room back on Earth was unbearable. Everyone watching knew that if Lena failed, the Drexari would retaliate with full force. But she didn't fail. She moved like a ghost, slipping past the alien defenses, landing the team in a crater near the hub. They planted the emitters, scrambled the communications, and vanished back into the dark. From orbit, the Drexari command ship began experiencing strange malfunctions. Their orders weren't reaching ground units. Their sensors showed phantom ships where there were none. Confused and suspicious, Marshal Karelok ordered a temporary halt to all bombardment plans. He needed answers, but he would never get them. Earth wasn't fighting a conventional war, and now the Drexari were starting to feel it. Over the next few days, Earth's resistance became bolder. The stealth fleet now expanded to include 3 additional ships built from hybrid human-alien technology, began striking Drexari outposts across the solar system. One by one, they took out small communication relays, supply posts, and monitoring stations. Each attack was fast, precise, and unpredictable. Commander Miles watched the reports roll in. His team was winning battles that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Still, he remained cautious. He knew this was just the beginning. The Drexari were powerful, and once they figured out how to adapt, the next phase would be even harder. But something unexpected began happening. Inside one of the captured Drexari ships, Dr. Vale uncovered files, data records of the Empire's long list of conquests. Civilizations had fallen quickly, almost all without serious resistance. The Drexari didn't know how to fight a drawn-out war. They'd never needed to. Their strength had always come from overwhelming power and instant fear. When fear didn't work, they became confused. Back in space, the Drexari High Command grew restless. Strategist Thurex, who had long warned about underestimating humans, pushed for a new approach. But Karelok refused. His pride wouldn't allow it. He doubled down, ordering the fleet into bombardment formation. Earth would be crushed by force if deception failed. But the humans were ready for that too. Kira's team had been secretly modifying the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, embedding cloaked mass drivers, huge cannons hidden inside rock. These could launch projectiles at incredible speeds, impossible to intercept. When the Drexari ships began to move into position, the hidden mass drivers fired. Several alien vessels were struck before they knew what hit them. Panic rippled through the Drexari ranks. These weren't just attacks, they were ambushes. Precise, surgical, and clever. And worst of all, the humans were getting better at it. Every hour. As the sun set over Earth, Commander Miles stood beside Kira and Omar at the control room window, watching the stars blink in the distance. He didn't smile, but his voice held something close to pride. "They wanted us to be afraid," he said quietly. "But instead we remembered who we are." For the first time in weeks, the stars no longer looked so dangerous. They looked like possibilities. The Drexari colonization fleet arrived without warning, a wall of steel and shadow stretching across the edge of the solar system. They came with confidence, not caution, believing Earth would finally crumble under the weight of their full might. 18 capital ships, dozens of support vessels, and ground forces capable of subduing entire continents drifted into formation. But what waited for them was not a frightened planet, but a world prepared with quiet defiance. In Earth's orbit, Commander Harlan Miles stood on the bridge of the newly modified human warship Resolute, watching the enemy fleet on the screen. His face was calm, but his heart pounded. Around him, his crew moved with precision. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and by every standard military logic, they should have had no chance. But logic had never won a war by itself. Captain Lena Cross had returned from her last mission just hours earlier, her ship Vigil now patched up and ready again. She joined the formation with the rest of Earth's stealth fleet, 20 vessels in all, built with a mixture of human creativity and stolen Drexari technology. They didn't shine like the alien ships, they didn't need to. Their power wasn't in size or numbers, it was in unpredictability. Across underground command centers, in bunkers and darkened labs, Earth's defense system hummed to life. Kira Sandoval's mass drivers hidden in the asteroid belt sat ready. Omar Vale's signal disruptors were already in place, silent and unseen, but waiting for their cue. But none of these were the centerpiece of the plan. That honor belonged to a device that didn't even work. Deep in the cargo bay of Resolute, behind layers of shielding and blinking lights, sat the quantum cascade resonator. At least, that's what the Drexari would think it was. In truth, it was a clever collection of energy emitters and visual tricks. Built to simulate the energy signature of a theoretical weapon, the Drexari feared more than anything. A device capable of creating a chain reaction that could unravel their entire communication network, reaching every ship, base, and city across their empire. A weapon so terrifying they had never dared to build it. But humans had. Or so it would seem. The bluff was simple. Make the Drexari believe Earth had created something they couldn't counter. Something that would threaten the survival of their entire civilization. Make them think Earth would use it, and most importantly, give them just enough proof to wonder if it might be real. The enemy moved into attack position. Earth's ships held steady. They didn't fire. They didn't run. They simply waited. On the Drexari command vessel Eternal Dominion, Imperial Overseer Kralix paced the observation deck. His sub-commanders were uneasy. Earth's lack of response was not what they had expected. No surrender, no desperate attacks, just silence. That silence was louder than any weapon. Then, a signal came through. A direct transmission from Commander Miles. Kralix accepted it, curious. The screen filled with the image of a human, calm, unafraid, and speaking in perfect Drexari. "This is Commander Harlan Miles of Earth's Defense Fleet. We know who you are. We know how you fight, and we know what you fear." Kralix hissed, insulted. "You are overmatched. Your resistance is meaningless." Miles tilted his head. "Then why haven't you attacked yet?" The Overseer remained quiet. Behind Miles, the camera panned to show the quantum cascade resonator, glowing with a rhythmic pulse. "You recognize this," Miles continued. "We found traces of it in your files. You considered it once, didn't you? Then chose not to build it. Too dangerous. Too unstable." Kralix narrowed his eyes, trying to hide his unease. The signature was there. The readings matched. "This isn't a bluff," Miles said with steady resolve. "You attack and we activate it. One pulse through your network and it all comes down. You've ruled through fear for generations. But this time, we are the ones you fear." For a long moment, the transmission hung in silence. On Eternal Dominion, the Overseer's staff scrambled to analyze the energy signals. The match was almost exact. The humans had done the impossible again. Kralix turned to his advisors. "It can't be real," he muttered. "It's too soon." "But if it is real," one of them said quietly, "we could lose everything." The Overseer had never retreated in his life. But now he was faced with something he couldn't calculate. Not a weapon, but a risk, a possibility of total collapse. And humans, unlike any species before, were willing to bet everything on that possibility. "Signal the fleet," Kralix ordered bitterly. "Fall back. We will not take this risk." As the Drexari ship slowly turned away, Earth's fleet stayed quiet. Not a single shot was fired. The stars once filled with threat now flickered with possibility. Back aboard Resolute, Miles exhaled, then turned to Kira and Lena. "Think they believed it?" "They saw what they wanted to fear," Kira said, with a tired grin. "And we gave it to them." "They blinked first," Lena added. But Miles wasn't celebrating. "They'll be back, with smarter plans, maybe bigger weapons." Omar Vale joined them from the rear of the bridge. "Then, we better make sure next time," he said, "the bluff becomes real." That night, Earth didn't cheer in the streets. There were no fireworks, no parades, only quiet resolve. Because they had learned something powerful. Fear wasn't just a weapon, it was a language. And now, they knew how to speak it. In the eyes, vast, silent dark, a message began to spread. among human hearts and soon to other stars. We are small, but we are not afraid.